Hey, this time we're going to take the opportunity to share a memory verse together. And yeah, you should get excited about that. I love that. It's great. And this memory verse is one verse out of a greater narrative that we'll refer again into in just a few moments. But so if you want to follow along on the screen, you can. It's also printed there in your worship folder. And basically, if you can imagine, Jesus and his disciples and others were in the temple courts. They were there to worship. And in the temple courts, the way they did their offerings is they had little boxes set up. And a couple different boxes were for different kinds of offering, like the ongoing maintenance of the temple and the building fund. These are real things, by the way. I'm not just making that up. We didn't invent those things. They've been going for a long time. But then they had the standard offering plate as well. We pass it around. They would watch everyone that had to walk up to it and drop it in, right? So they're watching, and they see this woman come and give what she could. And so it's Luke 21:3. It says this: "Truly, I tell you," Jesus said, "this poor widow has put in more than all the others." Let's read together. "Truly, I tell you," he said, "this poor widow has put in more than all the others." That's pretty easy, so let's close our eyes and we'll get this out. So, truly I tell you, Jesus said, "this poor widow has put in more than all the others." And now you're wondering, what happened? No, many of you already know that story, and if it's new to you, I can't wait to share it with you for the first time, okay? Hey, this week in the Red Letter Challenge, we're kind of moving on to the fourth principle, or, foundational element, a target we've been calling it to shoot for as Christians that are hearing these words of mine as Jesus and putting them into practice. All right, okay. Yeah. People who do that are like a wise man building their house upon a... All right, we're getting there. Okay? Sometimes, though, I should say just the last two words, and y'all can say the rest. Anyway. So, thinking about giving actually made me think about my mom. Because my mom has always loved to give gifts to people. So if you've ever read a book called The 5 Love Languages, it's great. It just gives you a way to think about how we all give our love in different ways. My mom likes to do that through gifts, and that's always been the case. But more recently, I've noticed that since she's a nana now, a.k.a. a grandparent, her generosity in gift giving has multiplied for my kids. I'm like, wait a minute. The tree didn't have that much overflow back in the day now. All kidding aside, as life circumstances has changed and she is more able to give gifts, she not only loves to see her Christmas tree at home really have to grow taller as the presents have to lift it up higher, but then she loves to see pictures of that happening in other people's houses that she's sending stuff to. It's just great. And I told my mom, why do you want to give so many gifts? It's okay. One gift is fine. It's really good. We know you love us. And she's like, but I love to see the smile on people's faces when they open up each gift, So there you go. All right. Okay. So there you go. And so if you guys want to come to my house with gifts, I will multiply your joy and smile. No, that's sorry. That's not how that works. That's extra. I didn't write that in here. So as we think about this, though, this is a target to be giving, okay? We're looking at all 5 targets: being, forgiving, serving, giving, going. Yeah, that's good. All right, this is the one that Jesus actually talks about with most frequency. One of the most frequent, actually. There's one topic that he talked about more frequently. It's the kingdom of God. And that's a shocker, okay? But he talked about giving more than he talked about love, more than he talked about heaven, more than he talked about hell. Okay, so obviously, he talked about giving a whole lot. So that means as we look at Jesus, we're going to see him live a life that is filled with giving, right? And just so you remember the story, right? He did indeed end up going and giving his whole life for you and for me, okay? So here's a provocative quote that you're going to read in the Red Letter Challenge if you haven't already. I know some of y'all can't help yourself. You're reading ahead. I love that, by the way. But go back and read this one again. He says, Pastor Zach When I read this the first time, I even was like, really? Come on, man. But then each time I keep coming back to it, I'm like, man, he's onto something. He says this, it's impossible, which is a strong word, to be a stingy Christian. Okay, there's a couple people that, all right. You were quicker to be amen on that than I was. I was like, man, really? All right, but yeah, I'm kind of, like Jesus is pressing upon my heart what he really means for this. Because at first I was kind of defensive about it. I'm like, come on, man, you calling him stingy? What's up? And it was, yes. And so it's impossible to be a stingy Christian. So in other words, if you're actually looking at Jesus and you're seeing how radically generous he is, and you're trying to emulate, remember we're not just going to hear his words, but we're going to put them into practice. Scripture says imitate, right? If we're going to do that, then it makes sense. Yeah, if we're doing Jesus stuff, because he's shown us how, then we can't be stingy, because Jesus was never stingy. Actually, that's not true. He was stingy with his judgment. But instead, he was generous with everything else. All right, so yeah, as he pours out his grace and we're wrestling with that, we got to figure out why then is this an area that we like to make more complicated than it really is? Why would Jesus talk about money so much, right? These are the questions you have to start to ask. Why would he talk about giving as often as he did? And ultimately, I think you can start to say this because he must have thought that people needed some wisdom when it came to managing their finances. Okay? And so here's, I think he's onto something. This is nothing new under the sun. That was 2,000 years ago. Here we are today. Many people are living paycheck to paycheck. All right? Recent studies show that of all people with full-time jobs, 78% of them are living paycheck to paycheck. That's a big number. Okay, and then 71% of those people are living in debt. 71%. It's a big number. But even as we see that big number, like none of us was like, whoo! Like no one was shocked, right? No one was shocked to hear that number, which is kind of startling. Right? Because in our culture, what we're basically saying is financial stress is normal. It should be expected. We're saying, you know what, living paycheck to paycheck, you might as well expect it. We're saying, you know, if you're not in a situation where you're financially able to be generous, well, that's just the norm. No big deal. And if, in fact, you're experiencing worry, anxiety, fear, if your relationships are strained because you're jumping in on the number one topic to argue about, money and finances, like normal, no big deal. So just get used to the new normal, basically, is what our culture says. In fact, they say, you know what, we know that's a problem, but we're also going to keep trying to give you more credit cards. Right? Yeah, I mean, so it's just like, not only should this be normal, but you should do more of that, is what our culture says. And what I'm here to say is that the church, as we follow Jesus, he's coming to us and saying, no, normal isn't working. And so maybe you should be abnormal. Maybe we as a community should look other than the culture that thinks all these things are okay to be normal. So we're ultimately saying, like, we need to maybe rework our priorities. So the first thing we got to do is admit something really important. This is going to be a controversial statement. We're going to put it up on the screen. You are rich. Yeah, you're sitting in this room, you're rich. Okay, and some of you are like, I don't know about that. Well, Andy Stanley was all over you, okay, because he says this. It's funny, rich people are in denial. And normally we're not really in denial about things that we know to be true. Like, for instance, tall people admit they're tall. Short people, sometimes reluctantly, admit they're short. Athletic people are usually pretty excited to admit they're athletic. Artsy people admit they're artsy, and they also admit and tell you they're okay with the fact that their car's a mess, their room's a mess, their life's a mess, but whatever, they're good at art, and they know it, so it's good. All right, now that's a joke, right? So introverted people will even tell you that they're introverted, and they hope that you'll get it. And then extroverted people can't wait to tell you they're extroverted, right? And I'm serious, like they really can't wait. Like, as if you didn't already know, right? But when it comes to rich people, like rich people don't like to admit they're rich. We don't like to admit that we are rich, all right? So here's just some facts. Let's start looking at the facts then. If you make $40,000 a year, which is, by the way, 41% of all of Americans, if you make $40,000 a year, you're in the top 4% of earners in the world. Now you're going, what? Oh. Well, now, small jump, relatively speaking. If you make $48,000 a year, we talk about that 1%, and we want to look at all those billionaires. If you make $48,000 a year or more, you are in the top 1% of earners in the world. See, but we usually just like to compare ourselves to ourselves, right? But if we're really looking at the bigger picture here, we enjoy a quality of life that few in history of the world have ever experienced. It's actually shocking if you look at the numbers. Our biggest concern is not starvation in our country, it's actually obesity, right? It's obesity. We have much and we consume much, and it shows, right? And so it becomes a problem. So here's a stat for you. For folks that make $100,000 a year or more, 10% of those people struggle to make ends meet. So you're thinking, man, $100,000, we already went to 48, now we jumped to 100,000, still there's a significant portion struggling, right? Okay, there's something underneath that, right? Like all these stats about what we do with our money and how we're struggling with it are just symptoms of something deeper, okay? Jesus will share that in a little while with us. Just so you understand that it's not just about those who make only 100,000, because I know there's a whole bunch of people in our community and even in this church that make even more than that, but it's all relative, all right? So recently there was an athlete kind of holding out, right? This athlete makes $14.6 million a year. I won't say who. You got options, actually, these days you can choose. All right, but when this person was talking about his contract, he said this: why would I want to help them win a title? They're not doing anything for me. I'm at risk. I have lots of risk here. I got to feed my family. Right, like I'm looking at $14.5 million and going, man, what are you eating? Like, what are you trying to feed your family? Like, so I almost threw up in my mouth a little bit right there. Like, seriously, so if you take taxes out of that, just to reflect on this and just to show you, like if you take taxes out of that and you say, well, you want to feed your family, okay, not only could he have fed each of his family, he could have given each of his kids a McDonald's franchise and then bought 11 more for himself with that much money. And then, okay, let's just go a different route. He could have fed 8.3 million people for a day, or he could have fed a village of 400 for nearly 57 years in parts of the world, right? So, like, those are, I didn't even have to share that part with you. It was like beating a dead horse all of a sudden. Because you were already there with me. You're like, $14.6 million, you can't feed your family. It's all relative. The way you hear people talk about their money, the way that they spend it, the way that they can't manage it wisely is a symptom of something deeper, okay? So let's look at the big picture of generosity in America. The average American gives $1,600 a year, right? And some people are like, oh yeah, but Christians, we're gonna give them, all right? Yeah. The average Christian in America gives $1,800 a year, which is only $200 different, just for the quick math. Just so you, $200 different. $200 difference in Jesus followers' generosity versus a non-Jesus follower's generosity doesn't, to me, communicate radical grace and generosity, right? So there's something to be dug into there to figure out why. What is this all about? And so I think that's what the Lord is pressing upon our hearts. Now, those big salaries, that makes it feel real distant, like that's them, though. Because I don't make $14.6 million a year, so of course I don't have that problem. But, all right, so this made me think, how do we get closer to home with this? So this one's an easy one, all right? So when we lived in St. Louis, Kristen and I was going to the seminary, we lived in an older house that was built basically around, the World's Fair in 1902. So houses back then, their closets were about this wide. Yeah, knowing heads are shaking, yeah, because they used to have that closet, or maybe still do, right? And apparently, the man who had one good suit and a few work clothes could fit his clothes in there, and then the wife could fit all of her clothes in there too. I'm like, wow, that's great. That's efficiency right there, okay? And so, of course, when that happens, what happens nowadays when people buy a place like that, if they don't totally remodel it, then usually the one of them will have the closets in the master bedroom, and someone else has to go use the closets in the guest bedroom, right? That's us. All right. In St. Louis, I built a whole new closet in the basement, okay? Because that's what we do, right? Well, that's full now, so we'll go to this next spot that has some space. We'll fill that up, right? So some of us have attics that are accessible. We'll fill the attic. We put plywood up there, fill the attic up with stuff. And then once that, that's too hard to get to, so let's make it easier to get to things. We'll put it in storage spaces in the basement. In the basement, we say, we need to use stuff and space in there, so we can't fit the whole storage. So then we're like, oh, well, we better use the garage. You see where I'm going? Like, say, by the way, garages are supposed to be for cars. I know it's a weird idea, but and just so you know, I am not perfect. I had to move stuff out of my garage so I could move my car in it this weekend to work on it. So we're in this together, okay? I'm looking at this going, what is going on here? Okay? Now, some of us have gotten so much stuff in our house that we now pay other people to store it in their garage that they don't use for cars. Okay, and they just line them up next to each other because there's so many people, right, that need storage for the stuff they're going to move over there and forget they have, right? And then they'll go back in there one day, or maybe their loved ones will have to do that. You see what I'm saying? And do an estate sale or something. Like this is what happens. So here's the deal. 25 years ago, the storage industry was pretty much non-existent, but now it's larger than the music industry in the United States. We love our entertainment, right? We love music, but the storage industry is bigger, okay? So there are 52,000 storage facilities worldwide, across the whole world, okay? In the United States, we have 46,000 of them. Who are rich? Y'all say we are. Just own it, please. Yeah. And with that comes challenges, right? Our priorities start to get a little bit out of whack. Our hearts become so attached to some of that stuff. We have a hard time passing it along, getting rid of it, giving it away. God love our building committee to look at every closet in this space. This whole, holy cow. I mean, y'all need to buy them some gift cards to somewhere. Maybe a roll-off or something. I don't know, like the dumpster. Anyway. So here's what's crazy. Basically what we're saying is and don't blame money. Money's not the problem. It's actually amoral. What's the problem is the love of money is the root of all evil, to be specific. The love of money. When money becomes your security and hope, your priorities are now out of whack. Money has become your idol. And the reason you know it has is because it consumes all of your worries, thoughts, anxieties. It's become a god in your life. It's taken the place of the one God that actually can give you hope and security, not just for this life, but for eternity, right? So here's why I think, though, we don't like hearing about this constant struggle for all of us. And here's why, people don't like hearing about money in the church. One, the church has to own it. There's a whole lot of people out there that have misused the funds that folks have given over generously and fallen from their lofty thrones, you might say. And so it's created a skepticism that's in the world. That people need to be trustworthy in order to receive my money. Right? Okay, yeah, that's true. The second reason, which I think is actually bigger, is the fact that money is the number one idol in our lives. No question. No question. And so we have to figure out how we can listen to Jesus, right? Like Jesus spoke about money more than all these other things because money was indeed that problem for us. And so we needed to hear him share his teaching and his wisdom, okay? And truly, actually, nothing says, I trust Jesus more than you in the present, trusting Jesus with now and your future, right? Ultimately, you're saying, Jesus, if you're going to be my number one priority, you also get to be my bookkeeper. And help me to see what I'm supposed to do with the finances that you have entrusted to my care in my life. All right? Now, y'all have heard this phrase, put your money where your... Yeah, even atheists buy into that idea, right? And it's real simple. Like what people do with their money shows you something deeper. Okay? You can just do an assessment of the percentage of what you've spent money on, and you'll see your priorities in your life. Okay? That's it. That's what that phrase means. Okay? And then now you can assess, all right, am I in the right spot? Or do we need to reallocate some things to better display what my real priorities ought to be? Maybe I need to do some work there. People will notice what you're up to, even though we try to hide it so well. And this is where we come into Luke 21, okay, where Jesus is watching on with his disciples. And this is how the scene plays out. As Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting in their gifts into the temple treasury. And he doesn't say anything about that. And he also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. We call them the widow's mite, generally, like just to mean the small little coin, right? Okay, and he says, truly I tell you, this is our memory verse, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had to live on, right? By the way, when you go around asking people who and do you think about in Scripture when you think about generosity and you take out the Sunday school answer, Jesus, this woman is the woman that's most often referenced. Like people know this story. They've heard this and they've seen this depiction of generosity, right? And it draws us in. Like, it's amazing. So think about this. What she gave, equivalent to today's money, is 2/5 of a penny. I mean, I don't know if y'all have ever tried to cut up a penny. I mean, we don't even do that. We're like, yeah, it's not worth it. We're just going to give a penny. That's just to give you a little bit of reference that 2/5 of a penny is a story that's being told hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later. Right? So, in other words, it's not always about the quantity of our giving, but it's actually about the sacrificial nature of our giving. Now, Jesus says it this way, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. That's Matthew 6:21. Where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. And ultimately, Jesus is saying, look, the money thing is a symptom of something deeper. And so, ultimately, when you respond to God's goodness in your life and whenever you give a portion of what He has given to you, you're doing that in a sacrificial way because you've watched Jesus give sacrificially, right? So it shouldn't be about, well, she gave a penny and I gave $100. Well, let's start talking about percentage then. For some, $100 wouldn't even, 14.6 million, $100 is you lose that in the couch. I want that guy's couch, by the way. I'm just going to take the couch and dig in. So you see what I'm saying? Like it's more than just about quantity, but the position of the heart will provoke intentional and sacrificial generosity. Okay? And now here's another aspect of giving money that is powerful. And this is something that's important for Kristen and I, too. Because I know, like, as we talk about money, sometimes people are like, all right, I've heard enough. Like, we've heard this. We know this. I'm like, all right, well, let's start being the wisest man to build his house upon a rock then. And not just listen to the teaching, but put it into... Let's practice it together, okay? Now, this is what it looks like. Kristen and I practice this together. We try to protect and preserve our living generously goal, okay? And sometimes Kristen, she's the best voice of reason in my life. She'll just be like, do you really need an F-150 4x4 pickup with 4-door, Maybe that's not what I meant to say. Never mind. Now, she's never actually said that because she didn't have to. I already know how ridiculous that is, right? Like, I don't need that right now. Okay. So we assess that together, though. And even people, like sometimes on staff, I got one person on staff that's so great about seeing it in me whenever there's a spirit of discontent. And they're like, they'll just say, you know what, maybe it's a good time to pray about the Lord providing you with contentment in what He has given you. Instead of thinking about all the time what you don't have, right? Which is a great thing. We're going to be in it together, okay, in that way. Now, I have an illustration that I want to use today because I want you to see that when you give money, your money can go places that you can't go. All right, so I just want to show hands. How many of you in the last 2 years have gone to Latvia? I don't see any hands. Okay, well, there's someone that isn't sure. Like, if you're not sure you went to Latvia, like, you've been some travelers then. Like, oops, we accidentally went there and went. No, we took a left. We're supposed to take a right. No, but most of us, like, we haven't gone to Latvia, right? Like, we haven't gone to Latvia, okay? But I want to show you a picture of a place that your money has gone in Latvia, all right? So this past week, several of us, I was with a team that was going for some training, and we ran into Pastor Artis. And Pastor Artis came up, and I had never met Pastor Artis. Like, Pastor Artis came up with such enthusiasm, I was a little worried. I'm like, whoa, you're my bubble, and I'm an extrovert, which I like to tell people, right? No. So, like, he was enthusiastic and excited. I'm like, well, I need to hear more about what's going on with Pastor Artis. And as you can imagine, his excitement in a Latvian accent, I was like, man, okay, it's like listening to a Texan say y'all. But so this is called the White House Project in Latvia. And here's what I found out. Several years back, like 5 to 10 years back, like, Pastor Artis came here as a missionary, and he visited with Trinity, and he visited with our school community and chapel and everything, and we were giving to support his missionary efforts in Latvia, right? And it's like, oh, awesome. He said 2 years ago, Pastor Worsing at another conference listened in on his workshop that he was sharing, and he was touched by how far they've come along and what the Lord is doing in the community. And so Pastor Worsing just said, hey, Pastor Artis, like what can we do to help? And so we came back and we gave this as a community. Look, this doesn't sound like money. We gave $2,500, which is, we're a community of 2,500 members. So it's $1 a piece. We all gave $1 a piece, you might say. That's silly math, right? But so that was seed money, I found out, to purchase an old house that they wanted to turn into a place that they could meet to worship and learn about Jesus. Okay. And it's a big place, actually, with lots of rooms, but it didn't have heat at the time. So this is the one room they could use. That's what the altar looks like. And if you turn and look the other way at the altar, then you get to see in the next, you got to go twice as a new slide. You get to see how they set up for worship. A few rows of folding chairs. All right, and then they were so excited to put a furnace in there so they could heat the place. It's a wood-burning stove, really. So they can heat one room. I don't know if you've ever been to Latvia. Well, you've never been to Latvia. I mean, the winters are a little harsh. And so this was huge for them because now over the winter season, they could say we could meet here. And when we say $2,500, when we think, no big deal, well, it went to Latvia for us, and it was seed money to kickstart them buying that house, and other people have jumped on board and bought into the mission, and they've given a little along the way. And so if you go to the next picture, it was hilarious. He looked at this and he goes, and now we have doors, And I'm like, yeah, there's a door, Artis. Like, that's great, man. Like, but he was so excited, right? Like, because now they have a door from one room to the other, that they could now use the space wisely and be able to actually heat that one room more efficiently. And so they're so excited that they're so close to now having a Sunday school room, right? Like, and when we say Sunday school room, like, it's like an old dining room that they put rugs on the floor, right? Like, and that's all. They're just so thrilled, right? But we didn't go there, and yet the Lord decided to use even a small amount of generosity and do big things. Artis wanted to say this to you, and it's real brief, but I'll tell you, he thought he was going to travel here, in between St. Louis and going to Washington, D.C., and then back to Indy, and I'm like, and so that's why he was so excited. He was like, but the Lord brought you to me. And I'm like, wow, Artis, that's great, man. So I wanted you to at least hear from his own words.
Thank you, Trinity Bloomington. Thank you. Lord bless you.
I mean, isn't that awesome? Like, he wanted to travel across the country to say thank you. Like, these are the things that the Lord is saying, like, that's what I want you to have a part in. I'm inviting you into my mission, even around the world, in powerful, powerful ways. Okay? This, by the way, is the one topic that the Lord actually tells us to test him in this topic. As it comes up, talking about tithing and honoring the tithe and all that. And in Malachi 3:10, it says this: bring the whole tithe into the storehouse. Don't be hedging. So that there may be food in my house. Test me on this, says the Lord Almighty. So he's like, try me. Well, okay, what's the test going to look like? He says, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it up. And, in the Old Testament concept of giving, it was obedience-based, which isn't bad. That we would be obedient to the Lord and say, here's my first fruits, Lord, because you've given everything to me. Here's the first 10%, Lord. Do with it what you will. Thanks for giving me 90 more, right? But then we transition into the New Testament, and we get to share generosity from a whole different position of gratitude. Because we get to see the grace and the love of Jesus Christ poured out so radically for each of us. And it ought to be mind-blowing, to be honest with you. My son wrestled with something last night as we were reading his Bible that we gave him the other day. It was so fun. He's digging in and trying to find all the little verses as a scavenger hunt that people shared their favorite verses. And he shared with me this story about how he didn't know if he could do one of the activities in there because someone else would be giving something to him that he didn't earn. And it was a scenario where he was supposed to go to jail, but the judge would say, no, I take the punishment on myself. And I say, wouldn't that be nice? And he said, no, I don't want anybody to have to do that for me. He's 7. I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that. But I said, you know what, that's what's so special about Jesus. It's because he didn't deserve it, but he wanted to do that because he loved us. And yeah, we're uncomfortable with it if we're honest. That he would do that, and we're the ones that were supposed to pay that price. We really resonate with a transactional relationship, but Jesus says, no, but mine's unconditional. So I'm going to pour everything out for you, right? Well, then you got to ask the question, all right, as we watch Jesus live generously, give everything, what does it look like for us today? How can we be practical about this? And one of the most basic ways to start is to figure out, all right, here's my budget. If you don't have a budget, you're just throwing darts in the dark. And by the grace of God, you might be making it. But if you got a budget, then you can actually plan for this. You can be like, hey, all right, 10% generosity, 10% savings. Then you got all these other buckets for the rest of life that you get to live, right? And allocate your priorities. You probably should pay for your house and, maybe your rent. And maybe you should purchase some food for your family and utility bills. And just be intentional, and see the patterns and to plan it out so that you can guard and protect your generosity and live within means that allow you to be generous, right? And that can be hard. It can be a shift, right? So that I would reflect on that as a family and pray over it. Be like, all right, are we able to tithe 10%? And how are we doing with that? And, what is the next step of growth for us? How do we make intentional decisions to be able to give in that way? And so maybe for some of you, though, in a real practical way, you're like, we've been there, we've set that pattern, by the grace of God, we're able to do that. And then it's like, all right, well then, what now? What's the Lord calling you to over and above? So that you might, what would others do? That others would see your good deeds and then they would glorify your Father in heaven, right? That they would see the generosity of God and that it might actually be something they receive for themselves. Maybe for the first time, because folks have seen your humble generosity expressed in your life. Some of that's happening through the big give. You're jumping on board. We love that. That's a special project, and there'll be more. Others of you, there's a couple of other ways that generosity happens around here. Sometimes it's through a gift that you have. You see quilts out here, and we've got what's called the Dorcas Circle. It's a group of mostly women. By the way, I don't think they would tell men they can't come, but I haven't seen a whole lot of men jumping in there yet. All right, but maybe if your gift is quilting, that'd be great. And I don't think they'll judge you, but no promises. I'm speaking for them. Maybe they will. All right, but here's what they'll do. They make these quilts so that they can be given away to Lutheran World Relief and sent to folks across the world who, in their time of need, could use the simple thing like a blanket. Maybe it's because of a disaster. Maybe it's because of a season of life. in their village, whatever. And this year, they've made 208 quilts. Yeah, that's crazy. If you know what it's like to quilt. Since 1998, they've made 2,505. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, that's crazy. 200. By the way, 208 even isn't their biggest year. 2 years ago was their biggest year. It was impressive. I don't know what was happening then. Okay, but that's powerful stuff. We've got, once a year, there's this thing called the LWML. And basically, these are women who are passionate about missions, okay? And so what they do, this right here, this little box right here is called the mites box, right? Mites. What? There's an S on there, so you read the box. So when you give what? Little mite, the widow's mite. That's what I'm saying. What am I saying wrong? Isn't that a T? Okay, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, I'm from Texas. Let me go. Mites. Mitises. It's mitises. And one is a mite. There you go. I'm sorry. The Texas slur is apparently sounding like something else. But if you read the box, this is supposed to be for little coins. Thank you. Thank you. I'm here all week, okay? I'm here all week to be misunderstood. It's great. What is this supposed to be? This is supposed to look, how many of us have a little change in the car? I know I do right now. You know, like throw it in the box and come and get it. They have just the Central Illinois District, LWML, have a goal of raising $100,000 with these boxes. $100,000 worth of change, you might say. Now, some will give dollars and bills and checks and stuff too, but the idea is that, look, out of our excess that falls in between the couches and everything, there can be people that are blessed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. So that's what the LWML is doing, and some of them are wearing purple today because it's LWML Sunday across our country, and it's a great thing that they continue to bless people in that way. So, you know, we've been trying to build a church. Has anybody heard about that? Yeah, that's a pretty big project. And it's going to take everybody's help together to do that. And that's something that maybe if you haven't already done that with our Cornerstone Capital Campaign, maybe that's an opportunity for you to say, you know, we're in a position now that we can jump on board and support the efforts to build a church that will be in our Hamilton site and be a part of building forward into the future in that way. Those are real practical things that the church has been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? And the Lord is inviting you into that, okay? So here's why we do it. It's one of our memory verses from before, just to remind us. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. See, it's just the character of giving. As we watch the Lord, as we watch Jesus live it out. And so now we say, all right, Lord, show us how we can be abnormal. We can model a life that's different than what we see everywhere else. That we could give radically and generously and trust that in that giving you will still provide for our every need. And I believe that you, never look more like Jesus than when you give. If he indeed lived his whole life to give to others, when we do that, man, we look powerfully like Jesus. So I pray, as I have been every week, that you see Jesus clearly this week, that you would allow him to teach into the way you practice your giving. And that as you respond to his teaching, that God would show you over and over and again how much he is blessing people in you and through you. In Jesus' name I pray it. Amen.